It's a good time to ask David, what is the role of the U.S. in supporting Ukraine, both financially and maybe through some other programs?
Thank you, Elena. Can you hear me okay? Thank you for having me here today, Elena, and it was really an honor to share the stage this morning with Chairman Kubiv. Many of you are probably familiar with the concept of a wordle, where if you take the text of something and then you lay out the words and the frequency that they come up, it kind of gives you insight into what is said. And I was thinking about that idea as I listened to Chairman Kubiv this morning, because I heard him using words over and over again like trust and investor clarity, transparency, everyone knowing the rules of the game. And I just need to comment just from the perspective of my own view, but also of views of the United States government, that this kind of language and this kind of focus is music to our ears. And I start with this comment as I back into addressing Elena's question about the U.S. role and U.S. assistance. Priority number one here is for Ukraine to find its own path to self-generated, sustainable prosperity. And the basis of our assistance, the kind of philosophy behind what we bring to the table, is to be a catalyst for that to happen. And I think what the chairman said this morning, combined with what my two colleagues to my right have just said right now, that's our starting point here. I mean, it is just fantastic news that Ukraine has reached a staff-level agreement with the IMF. And what is going to go into that is definitely the medicine that is needed here. I mean, obviously, Ukraine is in a very financially vulnerable moment, and the IMF financing, from our point of view, is what needs to be front and center as we move forward. Complementing that is the association agreement, which is an incredible opportunity for Ukraine to professionalize its economy and lock in its democratic institutions. Where we come in on that is to play a complementary role to what we have just heard about. The United States already has a robust assistance package here, and we are now gearing that up to help Ukraine in its transition going forward. Many of you are probably familiar already with our announcement of a $1 billion loan guarantee. That is meant to be positioned as a specific complement to the IMF program. Our vision is that it can provide the kind of funding that can be used to boost the success of adjustment to what will candidly be challenging but necessary IMF conditionality. We also already have a robust assistance program here that we're looking to fine-tune and to expand. We are focused on areas like, obviously, on providing assistance in the economic sphere. We've heard a lot of comments this morning about the importance of business climate and of anti-corruption. And these are areas that obviously we are very focused on. We want to do our part to ensure the success of the May 25th elections and other elections in the future. We want to enhance rule of law here, and we're looking at elements in that regard as well. I'd just like to comment also that we're seeing incredible outpouring from other sources here. Obviously, numerous institutions and donors have stepped up and are being incredibly generous, and there's a robust donor coordination process now underway here in Kyiv, and we are working to sort of take inventory of the resources that are going to be available from the donors, and then also to identify how different donors can play the most productive roles. And of course, the vision here is that all of us together will be responding to requirements that are articulated by the government of Ukraine itself. And so we are working almost daily, I would say, to understand from the new government here what specific requirements they face, immediately right now to stabilize the situation during their transition phase, and then in terms of long-term institutional capacity building. And I don't want to overlook that a big part of this is non-government sources of support, and we're seeing stunning outpouring from civil society, from the NGOs and so on, and also from the private sector, where we have constantly had groups come to us asking how they can play a part in what donors are trying to do and how they can play a part in creating the climate necessary here for the kind of self-sustaining prosperity that I'm talking about. So taking all that together, I guess my message to this room today is the United States intends to play a very significant role in supporting Ukraine going forward. And the central context for that is what we've just heard from. It's going to be the Ukrainian government itself, it's going to be the IMF program, and it's going to be the association agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Yes. From your experience, I mean, Ukraine now faces so many challenges and so many things need to be done. What do you think should be the priorities? What should the government focus first, and maybe what should you do the next step to boost the economy, to put it on a sustainable footing?
I think we've heard kind of recurring statements about the major priorities. Obviously, making sure that Ukraine addresses its near-term financial vulnerability, which I think is coming through the IMF program and the other donor support, which is likely, I believe, the number to marshal up to something like $27 billion, which is badly needed. More long-term, and we heard a lot about this as well today, is business climate issues. Just look at our bilateral economic relationship with Ukraine. It's a significant one, but it is underway. There's so much room for broader links in terms of trade and investment with American firms and with companies around the world. And I think improving the investment climate here, addressing corruption issues, making it so that regulation is clear, and sending the kind of messages we heard from the Prime Minister this morning of this commitment going forward to create that kind of stability for long-term corporate commitment here. I think locking that in right now, sending this message that this reform path is going to be locked in and is going to be sustained, is the number one priority right now.
Yeah, but we heard such messages for several times in Ukraine's history already. What is your expectations? Are you optimistic this time on whether the authorities will be able to deliver on their intentions, will be able to fulfill them?
I'm going to cast the optimistic vote. I am just profoundly impressed with the kinds of comments that are being made by the new government and the kinds of things that Prime Minister Yatsenyuk said this morning really show a deep understanding at the top of what is needed here, what has been of concern to investors. I made the Wordle comment up front because we haven't heard this kind of specificity, this kind of response to what everybody has been asking for. It really is something new, and I keep hearing across the board, yes, we had the Orange Revolution in 2004, but this one, this is where you're really seeing the new political will that has its roots in an energized population that is ready to take the difficult steps to go forward and carry things through to a vision of a Ukraine that is going to restructure itself and restructure its economy to take advantage of the place that it can occupy in a globalized world.
Okay, great. This is very inspiring. Thank you. And before we go back actually to the banking system, I would like to again entertain you with this small voting that we will have, but this we have on macro issues. And please have your voting devices ready. And we will be able to compare the results with our this year results with previous year results, because it will be third round of voting. It will be interesting to see how your attitude has changed over past years. So the first question that we have is probably quite obvious, but again interesting to see how results compare to last year. So what is the biggest obstacle to economic growth and development for Ukraine? You think now, is it over-reliance on gas imports and probably inefficiency of the gas sector? Is it lack of respect of the rule of law? Is there residual influence of social spend economy? And number 4 is the lack of credibility of the political elite. So please cast your vote. Do we have these nice tones coming so that we feel as MPs today again? Yeah, thank you. And what do we have? Yeah, lack of respect of the rule of law. So majority of you still think this is actually very similar to last year's result, but last year 70% of people said that this is a lack of respect of the rule of law that hinders Ukraine's economic growth. Now we see, there's still majority, but a smaller proportion of people who think so, and this is because bigger proportion of people think that this is over-reliance on gas imports. Last year we had only 3% of investors thinking that gas is a big gas consumption usage is a problem. So the next question is quite related. What do you think is Ukraine's greatest asset? You have quite a lot of options here. One is untapped natural resources, probably less now with Crimea going to Russia. B is the human capital, which we still have a lot. 3 is the political elite, different political elite now. 4 is geographical position, and 5 is the emerging civil society. Please cast your vote. Okay, here is the results. Not the majority, but 40% of people still think that it's a human capital. And basically we had pretty much the same situation last year in 2012. There were 37 people thinking so. I'm surprised to see that natural resources has only 12%. It was 18% last year, and 31% of people who consider this a very important asset in 2012. So we see that this is clearly a tendency that showing that this natural resources are becoming less important for Ukraine. What is a bigger asset now, much bigger asset now, is a civil society, and I'm very pleased to hear that you share my view that because the last year was really a turning point, I think, for Ukraine as the civil society started finally to emerge. Last year, only 12% of people thought it's an asset. Now we have 24 people, so it's twice higher percentage. That's a great news. And the next question will be quite technical. And we do it because actually investors prove to be very good predictors of Ukraine's near-term economic growth. And last year it was, majority of you were right already in the beginning of the year. So now you can choose based on your expectation what would be the GDP growth this year. So I guess that most of you will choose between 4 and 5. It's from -2 to -4%, and below 4% decline. So deeper than 4% decline. Please cast your vote. Okay, so 44% think that will be a decline, a mild decline of -2 to -4%. And this is in line with the government forecast. I mean, there are quite a lot of pessimists that thinking that growth will be below 4%, but there are some optimists who say that it will be +2 and higher. So just to give you an impression, last year we had the same question, and 74% of people expected growth to be between 0 and 2%, +2%. And actually last year growth was 0. So probably I don't need to worry about my forecast for this year. I already have it from -2 to -4%. Thank you for this. And the final question, this is about long-term perspective of Ukraine. Do you think that Ukraine will be able to converge with its Eastern European peers in terms of GDP per capita? And if you think it will be able to converge, when do you think it will happen? Is it within next 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, and this century, or it actually will not happen? Just to remind you that Ukraine GDP per capita was about $4,000 last year, and in CE countries we have it almost more than 2 times higher. It's 9,500. So please make your choice. Okay, 10 years. 33% expected to happen within 10 years. During the same voting last year, approximately the same proportion expected it to happen within 25 years. So I hope that next year we will have majority of people expecting it to happen within 5 years.